morning, everybody. Welcome to this Thanksgiving edition of Hawk Talk, normally coming to you on Friday mornings, but of course, we have a game tonight. And so it only seemed right to have Hawk Talk before the game. And whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world, this is Hawk Talk. And of course, it wouldn't be a Seattle show if I didn't have coffee in hand first thing in the morning. So welcome along, and let's talk some Seahawks. So unfortunately, they fall in LA, right? They drop 2 games to the Rams. If they do end up missing the playoffs, these will be a couple of the games that they look back on thinking that they really left something on the table. Both of those games, they ended up losing in the second half. The Bengals game would be very similar in that way. And we're going to go through this game a little bit because, unfortunately, this is one that's going to hurt them moving forward. It puts a lot of pressure on some games that are coming up because although they still have a path to the 10-7 record that I thought they were going to have at the beginning of the season, it's one of those where this one could have them slide away from that number. And only because of the gauntlet of games that starts tonight right here at Lumen Field. And then they have 4 games in a row that are no joke. So it's definitely going to be one of those where if they do find themselves on the outside looking in, this game against the Rams was probably one of those. And hey, Mitch, how's it going, buddy? Happy Thanksgiving. So, one of the biggest letdowns here, I've heard a lot of chatter about, people being mad that Myers missed the kick and, that they didn't get enough yards to get him, in position. Myers is an incredibly accurate kicker. So for him to push one wide, I mean, it's going to happen, right? It really, you can't fault the guy. I mean, it was still a 55-yarder. Like that is a no joke kick. I can't do that. Like the longest range I ever had kicking a ball was like 40 yards, 45 yards. So the fact that he can drill those, he drilled 2 of them during the game leading up to that. So you felt comfortable with him taking that shot. And kudos to Geno to come back in after getting injured and move them forward. There was a lot of people calling for Drew Lock to be the quarterback. He came in, goes 2 for 6 with a pick, right? Like not exactly seizing your opportunity there. So for Geno to come back in with an injury to his throwing arm, drive him down, get him close enough to have a shot at still winning this game, you got to feel pretty good about it. But at the end of the day, it goes in the L column, and this could be a game that keeps them out of the playoffs. And thanks for jumping in, Linda. Happy Thanksgiving. So yeah, it's unfortunately, it's something that coming into this game, we have to worry about because it's a bicep injury for Geno. He is listed as questionable, although they do believe that he's going to play. Every indication is that he's going to play. The real question is going to be is how well is he going to play? How long can he play? Right. So if he gets a couple of hits against a defense that, let's be honest, gets after the quarterback pretty efficiently, if our offensive line can't hold up to that, you might end up seeing Drew Lock early in this game if Geno gets hit. So it's something that we're really going to have to look at this offensive line. And unfortunately, this offensive line is still beat up. The injury report coming into today, as if I'm remembering right, is roughly has 12 players on it. Now, a lot of those players are questionable and probably going to play. But if you have that many guys that are beat up, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, right? Especially when you look at the Niners, who really only have 2 guys that are questionable or out, and that one of them is their safety. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. But as far as people posting that they want to see Myers gone now because he missed a kick, there's no kickers in the league that haven't missed shots at the end of the game. I mean, it just happens. Believe it or not, even though that is a dome stadium, there is some wind in that stadium. So for it to drive a little bit to the right there at the end, I mean, it happens. So it's some of the overreaction from the fan base is actually really hilarious. Now they're calling for Geno and Lock to be fired, and they want to go get somebody. I don't know who you think you're going to get at this point in the season, I mean, you have teams out there with injured quarterbacks that aren't picking the guys up that are available. So I'm not really sure where people are thinking this is somehow going to be an upgrade from what Geno has been, who still, believe it or not, had a fairly efficient day. One of the biggest things that hurts this team and has routinely hurt this team all season is they are the most penalized team in the league. I want to say that they are roughly 76 penalties on this season. So I don't care how good you are. If you are one of the most penalized in the league, it's really hard to win games because it's not like these penalties come when they don't matter. These penalties end up coming on third downs, which, will stifle a drive or extend a drive against your defense. Some of them are, most of them, honestly, are complete drive killers. Like if you get a holding call, you're backed up on your side of the field, and all of a sudden you're 1st and 20. I mean, you're looking at chunk plays because there's not a ton of plays in that playbook that is set up for, 2nd or 3rd and long. Like they're just, the playbooks aren't set up that way. Generally what you have is you have a first down play that's going to get you into 2nd and manageable. And then from there, you have a lot of options. You got, running plays and short routes and, whatever. But when you are constantly 2nd and 3rd and 15, or, one of them was 3rd and 23 yesterday, last week, those are hard to pick up. Like there is very few plays that in the playbook designed to pick up 23 yards. And at the same time, the defense knows you have to pick up 23 yards. So, Seattle ends up starting that game. They go 3 for 3 on third down, which is awesome because they are a 31% third down conversion rate team, which is, bottom 5 in the league. It's not great. And then they returned to that form and then it proceeded to go 2 for 12 from that point on. So although their numbers ended up being 5 for 15, they went 3 for 3 basically on that first drive. And then after that, they were atrocious. Like they were 16%, third down completion rate. So that's an element that has to get figured out. And a lot of that, you can't even blame on play calling. Like there's been a lot of hate for Shane Waldron, things like that. And the problem is you can hate on that all you want, but it's the undisciplined play that's the real problem. Because sure, they're struggling to pick up third downs, but the third downs aren't 3rd and short, right? They're not 3rd and 3. They're not, 3rd and 1, stuff like that. Most of these third downs are 3rd and 10 plus because of all these penalties. So, this particular game, there was so much laundry on the field all day. It was insane. Between the two teams, there was 222 yards of penalties, and just against the Seahawks alone, 130 of them. So you give up 130 yards to any team, you kind of deserve to lose that game. Now, as a fan, I don't love that. But, when you're analyzing the game, there's elements to it that you're just like, yeah, they should have lost. If you're getting penalized that much, if you are extending the opposing team's offense drives because of penalties all the time, just about every single Rams score, or it could have been every Rams score, was a direct, it directly came off of penalties. So they were basically drives that they were able to stop up, and a penalty ended up giving them a first down, and then ultimately they end up getting down the field and scoring. But there were quite a few times where they had them dead to rights. They had them shut down. It was going to be a punt, but there was a pass interference or a holding or just any number of penalties throughout this game. And, it's tough when your defense is on the field all day. You can have one of the best defenses in the league, and if they are mostly on the field all the time, the Jets is a prime example of this. They have a fantastic defense, but their offense can't get anything together. And so, unfortunately for them, they're on the field for, 35, 40 minutes a game. It is tough to win a game if you're on the field that long. Now, conversely, you can't create, you can't turn the ball over if you never have it. So, I guess there's that. But yeah, it's just, the third down conversion thing is a huge issue, and the penalties is a huge issue. And the third down conversions, are honestly on both sides of the ball. They have a hard time getting off the field on third, and they have a hard time staying on the field on third. So those are some really just massive holes in this team. And even if they do make the playoffs, that'll be the thing that ends up burning this team as far as getting very far into the playoffs. But that being said, I still think that they're, primed to be able to get to 10-7. They do have to split with the Niners. The way I was originally looking at it is if they would have won against the Rams, they could have dropped the next 4, win the last 3, end up at 10-7. You still end up with momentum going into the playoffs. It's not like you are losing a couple of games going in, kind of backing into the playoffs. It's never a good way to start. But had they been able to get there that way, then they probably would have been they could have been the 5th seed, depending on what the Cowboys end up doing through the month of December. And they would have been playing, potentially the South, right? And if they're playing the South, I feel good about them getting through that round. Now, if they end up with as the 6th seed or the 7th seed, now you're playing, a team like the Lions, or you're going to play potentially the Niners for the 3rd time. And the Niners, let's be honest, are a matchup nightmare for the Seahawks. It's a struggle with them. They have such a stacked team. Now, to be fair, the Niners are just a really good football team top to bottom. So it's not like it's schematically just they are good against, the Seahawks. They're good against the league at this point. So, kudos to the Niners. They have a fantastic team. All right. And one of the other problems that we run into, and it was a huge issue in this particular game against the Rams, is they can't finish drives in the end zone. I don't know what it is, what the problem there is, but they really can't. Like, they can move down the field, they can kind of get in range, and then the penalty thing starts to raise its head as they get closer to the goal line, and they end up just kind of falling apart in the red zone and settling for field goals instead of touchdowns. And had they been able to finish a couple of these drives in the end zone instead of kicking field goals, that last second kick that didn't make it wouldn't have mattered anymore. So as much as people want to freak out about a missed kick, there were so many problems leading up to that missed kick that, I'm not worried about it. The fact that they were still in the game to be able to make that kick was impressive. But at the end of the day, if they can't punch it in, if they can't wrangle in the amount of penalties that they're going to have, like, you're going to have some, right? I mean, there's holding on every down. So if they want to throw a flag, they can. So it's not that they're going to run mistake-free football. That's not realistic. But they can't have 12, they can't have double-digit penalties, right? It's just not an effective way to win games. So, those are really the spots that kind of fell apart for this Seahawk team. And, one of the problems coming in that I outlined in last week's Hawk Talk was they really struggle against seam routes and in-cutting routes. Like, our linebackers have a hard time covering the middle of the field there. And Stafford really exposed something that other teams hadn't taken great advantage of. And he had a ton of throws to the flat that, they made yards on. And unfortunately, this Niners team can do all of that, and they have more athletic people than the Rams do. So that is an area of the field that you'll really want to look at, especially in this game, is, are they going to expose the middle of the field? Of course, because that's been open to any team all year that's had enough time to throw the ball. But those throws to the flat, you're going to see catches by, you're going to see catches by CMC and Debo out there in the flats to, basically just have a lot of yards after catch. And you're really hoping that Woolen or Witherspoon can make those tackles up front, because if they get by them, there's going to be a lot of open space, and then you need Love and Diggs to be able to cover it on the back end. But, if you remember 2 weeks ago against Washington, because of how aggressive Love and Diggs can be, if they leak outside and that ends up being more of a wheel route, they could be out of position and end up being a home run ball. So there are there's just a lot of undisciplined play that is frustrating to watch from time to time, especially as you analyze the game. If you're just sitting there watching the game with a beer, it's not that bad. But as far as really watching what they're doing, you can see these misalignments because they're being a little too aggressive and not staying on the field where they're supposed to be. Because, one of my coaches years ago, he said, just making a play can be the play, right? So just making sure that you're in position to make a play can be the play, right? So because if you end up out of position and you miss it, well, now all of a sudden you could be conceding points. So sometimes I was generally a corner, but sometimes I would play free safety. And as a corner, you are much more likely to try and break on a play because you got to support that run defense more than, some of those safeties, especially if they're playing, back, if they're playing center field or, split, whatever. But filling in there, I had really struggled with not trying to come up to the ball. So I understand the issue with it. But the thing is, there's one play that sticks out in my mind. Had I stayed in the spot that I was supposed to, I would have had an interception because they threw the ball away. And because I came up on what looked like a run play through the middle, I ended up missing that ball. So there's a lot wrong with it. And hopefully we can get this buttoned up. And we're going to find out here in, a few hours, right? Because it's Thursday night football for the Seahawks and the Niners. So it's going to be a lot of fun. All right. They have to blitz Purdy. Yes, absolutely. And we have Jamal Adams coming back for today. He is coming back off of that knee injury, I believe it was. So he should be able to play a factor in that way. They've also been really good about using Witherspoon off the edge to blitz. I don't know that they're going to be able to run much of that with Witherspoon today, just because of the amount of weapons that the Niners have, right? CMC is dangerous everywhere on the field. Debo is very similar in that way. He's that security blanket guy. And then, you can't forget Ayuk is out there. He can burn you also. So they're going to probably have to use Witherspoon back in coverage for the most part and try and create pressure, really from Jamal Adams and Leonard. Those are probably where they're going to try and get that pressure coming up. But yes, I agree. They're going to have to move Purdy off his spot. If you give him time, he's shown you time and time again that he can absolutely carve up a defense. And, the one thing that's funny is Purdy was getting a lot of hate for those games that they lost. And at the end of the day, he's not the most athletic guy, right? So he needs his weapons, and there's nothing wrong with that. Similar to Geno, like he needs protection. He needs the guys around him. That's just what it is. And people will hate on him and say he's not elite and they're not, they're system quarterbacks and all of this. It's like, okay, well, that's fair. And they're not wrong. But the thing is if they run your system well and they're smart with the football, you're going to win a lot of games. And you can win a championship with that. Because as much as you love a guy like Josh Allen, who can go out there and play hero ball and carry a team and all of that, all of that looks great. It's fun to watch. What it doesn't do is consistently win you football games, because if you have an off game, there's nobody there to pick you up. So I just don't think that being called a system quarterback is as bad as people try and make it sound, right? I would rather have a guy that runs the system correctly, smart with the football, than, goes out there and is Josh Allen or Brett Favre. And don't get me wrong, as a football fan, I love watching those guys because they're not on my team. Like, they are exciting to watch. What they don't typically do is win championships because they're reckless with the ball. And at the end of the day, you got to get through some of the best teams to get to a Super Bowl. So I would rather have a quote unquote system guy that's smart with the football and uses the team to win games than have to go the way of one guy's arm and hope it works out for, 4 games through the playoffs. So it's thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Yep. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It's it kind of fun being a little bit early on a Thursday here, chatting with you guys, talking football. And of course, I get to be at the game today. So if anybody happens to be watching this and they are going to be in the stadium, be sure to hit me up on Twitter and we can, say hi. It'd be awesome to meet everybody. So, all right, let's get into a couple of these questions. And yeah, so let's see. We got, how long is Walker out? Okay, so this looks like he's probably going to be out for a couple of weeks. I know he's listed as questionable for today, but everything that I've either heard from the Pete Carroll sound bites or have read from the Seahawks organization all says that he's probably out for today. One of the things Pete Carroll said yesterday was, you never know. He may wake up this morning and feel ready to go. I'm going to go with that's probably not a real thing. So if you have Walker in fantasy, probably sit him on the bench because he is not going to be a factor today. So they're going to need Charbonnet to have a good day out there. But one thing that's kind of cool is we're finally going to get to see Kenny McIntosh coming back in. The kid out of Georgia ended up being on IR all year so far, hasn't actually stepped on the field yet. So you may see him get his first carries of the season today against the Niners. Was a real dynamic runner there in Georgia. So that'll be fun to watch to see how it is he's come along. And of course, DJ Dallas is, he's their return man and always a factor. So, we'll have to see how this running game pans out. But at the end of the day, it looks like Walker's probably out for at least a couple of weeks, which is definitely unfortunate based on the games that they have coming up. They have the Niners, obviously, tonight. And then next Thursday, they have the Cowboys. And then they have the Niners again, and then the Eagles. So those are all games that they really need this running game to be, elite, really, because all of those teams play good defense. And, they're just going to be a tough out no matter what. So if they could, they really needed Walker here, and unfortunately he's not available. Do I think he's going to be back? He'll probably be back for the next Niners game. I would imagine he misses tonight. He probably misses the Cowboys game. And then he would probably be questionable. I'm guessing he would have kind of light practices the week before that Niners game, but I would imagine for that second Niners game, you'll see him at least get a few touches on the field. So, but yeah, no, couple of weeks probably. Can the Hawks take advantage with the safety Hufanga out? That's really going to come down to whether or not the line can give Geno protection. If they can't, then it's going to be a long day because that defense is really aggressive. They're really fast. Obviously they have they got Young and Bosa, and so there's guys back there that they're going to be able to create pressure against fully healthy offensive lines. And sadly, the Seahawks still don't have the 5 that they want up front up there. So this is another one where you're going to see a lot of tight ends coming in to help block. You might actually see, split running backs to try and give some help in that way. So this is another one where if Geno stays upright, they got a shot. If they end up coming in and running roughshod over him, it's going to be a long day for us Seahawk fans. And if you're in the stadium, it's going to be cold. So that may actually play a factor that helps the Seahawks a little bit is the Niners don't play in the cold a whole lot. So that might help us out, but it's going to be dry. It's not supposed to rain today. Realistically, if it was going to be something that helped our team out a lot, it would have needed to be cold and rainy, probably windy too, because why not? There's always some wind in Lumen Stadium because it's open air and, part of it faces the Puget Sound. So you get some pretty good wind whipping through the stadium anyway from time to time, certainly down at the ends. It's not the easiest place to kick in the world. So that, I mean, I guess to that point, it's another one where the Hawks really need to put the ball in the end zone rather than having to rely on kicks. All right. Let's see. Does Geno play? Yes. So he's going to play. It's going to be the effectiveness that I'm a little bit worried about because it's a bicep injury on the throwing arm. And so that can affect your mechanics. It can definitely affect power. It can even affect the speed of the ball coming out. So those are real interesting. I also thought it was kind of strange that it was listed as a bicep injury, even though all the reports said that it was an elbow injury during the game. So I'm not really sure if maybe he has two injuries or if that's just how he went down, and it ended up being the bicep injury, and it was just icing everything as a protocol. But every indication says he's going to play. But like I said, at the beginning, I really think that it's going to be how much does he get hit, and does he end up getting taken down on that arm, because that could make it where you end up seeing Drew Lock coming back in. You have to imagine if Lock comes back in, it's still going to be better than it was last week against the Rams. Obviously he doesn't have a whole lot of first team reps or anything like that. So that definitely plays a factor on being successful in the game. But, there's also the throw that he sent right to the defense. So that doesn't necessarily inspire confidence of him coming in and winning a game for you, especially this one. But, that's, I guess we'll see. But honestly, I hope we don't have to see Lock. Hopefully Geno can stay upright, make some plays, and can stay relatively clean. Sacks obviously are part of it, but, he's also been one of the most hurried QBs in the league. And that's a stat that I really think should get more, it should get more focus, I guess I should say, is, getting thrown on the grass, obviously that's great, right? Play over, no problem. But there's something to be said about quarterback hurries, because if you can hurry a quarterback, you move them off their spot. It does extend a play, so you need your secondary to be good. But it also means that they're probably going to throw a less accurate pass. So that'll give your secondary more opportunities for turnovers. Also, if they are moved off their spot, they have to scramble around. You end up with a little more opportunity for turnover, for fumbles, right? Because if you got somebody that an edge rusher, let's say, that's coming around the backside, or an outside linebacker that's got some good speed that can catch you from behind, that's where a lot of quarterback fumbles end up coming from. So as much as the sack stat is pretty and looks great on the sheet and all of that, I really like the quarterback hurry end of it better. And again, defensive guys. So that those are the things that I look for, which again, if you're just casually watching, you want to see sacks, right? You want to see him come and blow up a guy and, potentially get a strip sack or something that, those TJ Watts and, Myles Garrett's. And those guys are creating those scenarios. So, you need that. Like that is an element of the game. There is no doubt. But quarterback hurries should definitely get more love than it does. So, but say all of that to say, yes, Geno plays. I appreciate it, Linda. All right. So can we fire our OC yet? This is hilarious because there's so much hate for Shane Waldron. And if you actually look at what he's dealing with, I kind of feel bad for this guy, because he is trying to keep Geno upright and healthy. He is doing it with a line that hasn't been right since the first half of the first game. He has to bring in 3 tight ends to try and block. So now you're limiting your throwing ability to, 2 receivers and a running back, and potentially, one of the tight ends that can leak out to the flat, or, a little dig route or something, because they have to at least be in to get a little bit of a shove block before they release. yeah, the play calling doesn't look super dynamic, but it's because most of the creativity is trying to keep Geno on his feet rather than being able to expose all of the things down the field. So, although production wise, I get why people are upset, if you look at what he's having to deal with and the way he's having to call plays, I can't really hate on Shane Waldron too much because most of his scheme is just trying to keep Geno from dying in the pocket. So, I mean, you could fire him. I don't really know where you think you would go that would someone would be better because you don't have the blocking up front. Now, if this is what you were seeing and the blocking up front was great, absolutely, right? Then yeah, you have to look at whether or not he's doing his job correctly, and who it is you think could use your personnel better. But because of all the injuries up front and the fact that it's been a rotating cast up front, it's tough to say that he should lose his job in a situation where one of his hands is tied behind his back because otherwise you would have had to say the same thing for the Rams last year because they had a rotating group in front of him and they made Stafford look very, very average. And then on top of it, ended up getting him hurt. So we've seen this movie before. We just seen it on another team. The Rams encountered that last year. The Cardinals encountered it last year. So it's not even like it was a team that you didn't get to see if you're here in the NFC West. It's teams in our division. So they got screen time here in the Pacific Northwest. So it's not like it's a question mark of how this works. If you don't have good blocking up front and your guys are a rotating cast of guys, I don't care how dynamic your quarterback is or how good your play calling can be, you're going to have guys that, like Stafford, who's a stat monster, absolutely moves the ball, puts up points, like he's that dude, looked very average, got hurt, right? You have Kyler Murray, incredible athlete, absolutely incredible athlete, looked very average, got hurt. What did they have in common? The offensive line had a rotating cast. They couldn't stay protected. This is exactly what Geno has going on, and it's what Shane Waldron has to try and call plays with. So as much as I keep hearing about we should fire our OC and all of that, it doesn't make any sense because it's the players on the field that really have to get that done. So yeah, so should they fire him? No, I don't think so. I think you have another season of Waldron just because he hasn't been able to call anything that he probably would have wanted to call. Now, if he comes out next year, everybody's healthy, and he makes the same kind of play calls, then then you have a real conversation. All right. Can we draft a quarterback this year? And if yes, can it be Penix or Nix? Yeah, absolutely. They can draft a quarterback this year. It's a very deep draft. And so that is encouraging based on where they'll probably be drafting, right? So if you're a first round playoff team, which Seattle is pretty routinely, you're going to be picking somewhere, 22nd, 24th, something like that. And a guy like Penix and Nix, they're probably going to go somewhere around in there. You could potentially even see one kind of slide into the top end of the second round. Now, if they want one of those two guys, they could, move some picks around a little bit to go up a few spots to try and get them. I could see them doing that. There are some teams that need quarterbacks that are going to be picking ahead of them. So they potentially might have to, finesse some picks around to be able to move up to do that. But could they do it? Sure. Do I think Penix will be gone before the Seattle picks? Most likely, especially being a front runner for the Heisman. I would say that, especially since, at this point, Washington is still undefeated. They got the Apple Cup this weekend, but, those are, if he ends up going undefeated, gets into the college football playoff, they're currently sitting fourth. I don't think Penix will still be on the board by the time Seattle gets to pick. You never know. The draft is kind of a weird animal, but if they happen to, if they win the championship the Pac-12 championship against what looks like it's probably going to be Oregon. And then they go on to the Final Four, and say they don't even get the national title, say they end up in the title game, something like that, then no, I don't think Penix would still be around. He'd probably be the overall favorite for that Heisman win. So I would imagine he ends up becoming a top 10 quarterback at that point. Now, Nix, on the other hand, if he drops another game, to Washington, he may still be around late in the first round, early second. So you could potentially get a Bo Nix. You could also get like a May, probably. He probably is a second rounder, is my guess. But yeah, I mean, you're going to see, obviously Caleb Williams is going to be gone in the first few picks, but Penix is kind of that bubble. Like, you don't really know where he's going to be. He could be real high in the first round. He could drop into the second round. He could have that Will Levis type of thing where you thought he was going to be a really high first rounder, ends up going like mid second round, something like that. So Penix could be that guy. Do I like Penix in this system? Sure. And the way that Geno's contract is set up, it would actually lend itself well to bring him in, learn a year behind Geno, and you have so many young players around him that you'll be able to kind of build for the future there. And I think Penix could be a good fit. Obviously, Bo Nix is an absolute athlete as well. So if they got him instead, you could do something very similar, because again, that Geno contract is really friendly towards the team. One, they're not paying him a ton based on as far as the league is concerned, right? I want to say he is the I think he's like the 18th highest paid quarterback. So I mean, it's not like he's getting top dollar, and there's outs on his contract every year. So if he were to potentially not win the job, Seattle has proven time and time again that they are willing to go with not necessarily who they're paying, but they want the best guy on the field. So, I mean, that's how Russell Wilson got the job, right? Because they had given another quarterback quite a bit more money to never take a snap. So if they did bring a guy in and he's ready to go, I could see him moving off. And if he's not quite ready to go, you have Geno. And he has the intangibles that you want your next guy to learn, right? He's smart with the ball. He's a good leader. He's great in the locker room. The people, the players like him. So, I mean, he's coachable. So, like, if they do have to sit behind him for a year, that's actually not a terrible situation. And I agree with you, Linda. I like Bo Nix as well. Again, great athlete. Either one of those guys would be a good fit for the Seattle team. So yes, they can pick one up. It's probably even a smart move to draft a quarterback this next year, just again, because of how deep the draft is. You can get one, late first round, early second round. In fact, there's probably a couple of guys that would be serviceable. That'll be a third round pick. So yes, do I think they can get Penix or Nix? Only if they want to move in the draft order, because I think they're going to be just too good to be able to get them where they're going to pick. So, all right. So let's get into this Niners game. I am a little bit worried about this. San Fran comes into this as a 7-point favorite, which as an analyst, I feel is probably about right. As a Hawks fan, naturally, I'm more of the Go Hawks, and we went outright. But, if I was betting on this game, sadly, I'd be betting against my team. And yes, you could be saying that I'm hedging my bet, but mostly it's just smart money, right? Like, yeah, am I hedging my bet? So if I lose, I win. But if I lose my bet, we won on the field. I mean, sure. You can call it that if you want, but it's also just smart use of money. Like, if you're betting on this game, it's just man for man down the roster, the Niners unfortunately are the better team. So 7 points. I do think they probably cover that. So, and of course, we have our Pick'em show coming up here about an hour after this one wraps up. So be sure to come back for that. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to be, once I get to the game, I turn my analyst brain off and I am there to watch a game with my friends, drink beer, and have a good time. So then I'm just going to be loud and yelling with my friends and making Lumen Field what it's, give it the reputation that it has, because it is a loud stadium and it is a ton of fun. If you haven't been here in the Northwest and gone to a game at Lumen, I highly recommend it. It is a blast. The atmosphere is electric. So definitely come out to that. So much fun. Good luck at the game. I appreciate it. It's going to be fun. I hope we get a win. It would be amazing to do that to the Niners again. One, because it's a divisional rival. Two, because any game you're at, you want to win. But yeah, I mean, it would be amazing to show up on a Thursday night again. They are going to be in the action green, so they do play pretty well in that, even though I'm not a huge fan of that jersey. Yeah, I mean, so here's some of the things that this Seattle defense is going to have to do in order to overcome some of the issues that they've had really all season, and certainly last week against the Rams. One, they're going to have to be able to stop CMC, and that is easier said than done. Obviously, I don't know if he still is, but he was leading the league in rushing yards. So the guy is absolutely balling out, and like he's gonna get yards. You're not gonna shut him down. It's not that's not a real thing. He's so good at catching the ball out of the backfield, running the ball, all of that. So I mean, he's gonna get yardage. It's just limiting his ability to have explosive plays is really kind of what you have to look at. And you're also gonna have to slow down Deebo Samuel, right? He, like I said before, is that absolute like security blanket for him. And he can be everywhere. He can also get stuff out of the backfield, right? It's why they were having an issue, when it was contract time, because he was tired of being used as a running back, which understandable, right? Running backs don't make the money that receivers do. So I wouldn't want to be forced into basically becoming a running back either. But the thing is because he can do all of those things so well, you pair that with a CMC, it's why you see this team, after losing a few, they get healthy on defense and they get one of their most dynamic playmakers back on offense. And all of a sudden this team is right back to where it was and beating up on teams. So being able to slow down CMC and slow down Deebo are huge elements of this game. If they can't, this game could honestly get out of hand. That thing where Stafford found the flat, really exposed that area of the field, which is something that really hasn't been as big of an issue until last week. He really found a way to create some pretty good plays off of those throws to the flat. He didn't end up having to do a ton through the middle and up the seams. The problem with this Niners team is they're probably going to be able to do both because you're going to have Ayuk coming, in some of those slot routes. You're going to have CMC coming out of the backfield into those flats or, little bump dig routes. And those can be a real problem because this Seattle defense has struggled to block or, to defend those areas of the field already. And they have guys that really excel in those areas. You're also in that asking Purdy not to have to do too much because you're not waiting for plays to develop necessarily, so you can get the ball out quick, which slows your ability to have a solid pass rush. Or if you have, a Jamal Adams who's coming in on a blitz or something like that, if the ball's coming out in 2.5 seconds, it's really hard to be able to get all the way to the quarterback unless you just had a free release. If you're a Jamal Adams fan, you do realize that he's not great in coverage. So if he's trying to stay back and guard some of those areas of the field, then, that becomes a real issue. On the Seattle side, obviously, you need your receivers to be on point, and you need Geno to be able to get the ball out quick. So you're going to need Lockett to run, some of those quick routes that he's so good at doing to create separation. But Geno's going to have to get the ball out real quick. The other thing is Metcalf. How effective is Metcalf going to be? He's coming off of that toe injury. He did have a full practice yesterday, so hopefully he's fully up to speed. But sometimes toe injuries can affect your ability to get in and out of a break, and so that makes you wonder how effective Metcalf can be. Metcalf is also kind of more of a deeper threat, and if the offensive line doesn't hold up, he's going to be, he's not going to have a lot of targets, where kind of similar to where he's had throughout the season, right? Any of the games where Geno has had a lot of pressure, Metcalf doesn't get the most work because his routes typically take a little bit of time to open up, whereas JSN and Lockett tend to run, shorter routes that have crisper cuts. So they get that, they get that separation right away. Metcalf, have a big game. He's going to need to. He has had some really good stats over the last couple of weeks. He's been right around 100 yards in the last couple of games. So he definitely could be a huge factor. And honestly, he's going to need to be. It's just going to come down to how much blocking does Geno have, and, where it is that defense can be. But, again, they do have a safety out. So if they can get some, if Metcalf can get some good, alignments against that defense with a, with a backup safety in there, he definitely could be a huge factor. And if Seattle's going to win, he needs to be. He absolutely needs to have at least 100 yards receiving for this team to be able to do what they need to do and get in the win column. But, they're also going to need this running game to come together. They're going to need to have Charbonnet have a huge game. And I think he can, right? Like this needs to be the coming out party for Charbonnet. And as aggressive as that Niners defense is, he absolutely can have, he can definitely have that day. And let's not discount the fact that McIntosh gets to come in, right? This is going to be his first game back. Hopefully he gets a few touches, get him up to speed. I don't think he's going to have a huge day, but he can make a pretty good impact. If you remember him playing in Georgia, he definitely has, he's definitely a strong back, right? So it'll be really cool to see him finally step on the field. It's unfortunate that it took him 12 weeks to be able to get here. But, when you have Walker going down and you have another guy that's able to come step in, hopefully that works. And yeah, a lot of crossing patterns underneath to get the linebackers out. Absolutely. Certainly maybe a couple of bunch plays where you have JSN and Lockett essentially with a rub route to free one of them. Cause it's hard to stay with those guys. They're very quick in and out of cuts. But the problem is those are all short routes, right? So you can't fall behind because you're not going to be able to just, have some of those home run plays against this defense. So if you're marching down the field and you need 12, 13 plays to get there, your defense needs to be able to get off the field a couple of times because, this Niners defense is no joke. So not every drive is going to end up, in the end zone or scoring. So you're going to need your defense to be able to mirror that effort. Now, at the same time, this Seahawks offense can't have all these third down failures, right? They need to extend drives. They need this defense to not be on the field all day. So there's going to be a lot to watch. I'm excited for this game. I actually love the Niners rivalry games. They are a ton of fun to watch. I like them much more than the Rams. And the only reason I say that is because the Rams are just a really frustrating team for the Seahawks. I don't know what it is, but they find ways to lose against the team, even when they're bad. So I much prefer just the hard hitting action of the Seahawks versus the Niners. They're so much fun. They're so much fun to watch. Plus, going to the game is always a blast because then, you get a chirp at the Niners fans and they chirp back and it's a ton of fun. So if you happen to be sitting next to me and you're a Niners fan, bring the chatter. I love it. It's a ton of fun. All right. And obviously, because we're going to the game. It's Thursday Night Football. So that is going to be my Thursday Night Football sports bar location. So if you happen to be at the stadium, be sure to say hi. We'll take a picture. It'll be a lot of fun. And and best sports bar of the season, right, is Thursday Night Football at the stadium itself. So there is that. Again, if you were there, say hi. And then other than that, we will see you in just about an hour with our Pick'em show, and enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving. Hopefully some of you got out and played some Turkey Bowl. Sadly, I'm going to miss that this year. That is something I love to play every year, though. So it's just the right way to start a Thanksgiving is get out, play some football, come back, watch some football, eat some food. Such a fun day in that way. So hopefully you guys are out there having fun, hanging out with friends and family, and enjoying some good football. Other than that, see you in about an hour with our Pick'em show. Have a great day, everybody.